The sound was always the same, a whisper. It came after the silence, when the city had already faded beneath the mirrored windows of Ezra Delacroix's penthouse. A name, his name, pronounced with the slowness of someone who knows exactly what he is doing, as if the syllables were tongues on his skin. Ezra woke up breathing heavily, his body damp with a sweat that didn't come from the heat, but from memory, or the absence of it. But that night, when he woke up gasping for breath with his eyes fixed on the dark plaster ceiling, something was different. The name continued to echo inside him even after he woke up, as if the dream wasn't over yet. The sky outside was too dark for the hour, and there was a smell in the air, not of perfume, but of presence. He stood up slowly, barefoot on the cold black marble floor. He walked through the sliding glass doors that led into the living room and stopped in front of the coffee table, where something was waiting for him. A black envelope, sealed with red wax. Ezra frowned. There was no name, no sender. He hesitated. Then he broke the seal. Inside, a single piece of paper with feminine handwriting, curved like the outline of a secret. You left the door open, and I came back. Ezra's heart slowed, not from calm, but from a restlessness so familiar he almost mistook it for longing. It was her. Her name didn't exist in the records, or on the cards, or on the contracts, but existed on his body. Ezra called her Liora, because in the dream she never said her name. But her eyes, they shone like light through dark glass. They met, if that's what it means, on a night that may never have happened. She always appeared the same way, at the foot of the bed, naked, with wet hair as if she had just come from somewhere he had never been able to see. She never asked anything. She just touched his lips with her finger, and he woke up with a desire so sharp it hurt. For years, Ezra tried to rationalize it. Psychologists, hypnologists, neurologists, but no one could explain how a dream could have a smell, a texture, or leave marks on the skin. Liora left bruises, kisses, cuts, and he always whispered his name before disappearing, a name that now came back to haunt him awake. That morning, Ezra didn't go to the winery. He left his phone on airplane mode and spent hours in the library of his mansion, searching through the archive of letters, objects, notes, anything that could connect that envelope to something real. But it was at dusk, already tired and drunk on a red wine he could barely taste, that he saw it. At the back of the shelf where he kept his deceased mother's relics was a small box, made of old wood. It had never been opened. With trembling hands, he broke the metal clasp, and inside he found three things. One, a black satin ribbon, curled as if it had been torn from a dress. Two, a golden key, too small for any door in the house. Three, a card with a single sentence. Memory is unreliable, but the body always remembers. The smell came back. Jasmine and tobacco. Her smell. Ezra fell to his knees. His head was spinning, and for the first time in years, he felt fear. Real fear. Because the dream, or whatever it was, wanted him awake now. And he had no idea what it meant to have left the door open. Night fell with an unusual heaviness. Ezra stood motionless in front of the roaring fire, his eyes fixed on the small golden key on the glass table. It seemed to shine more than it should, as if it had been recently polished, as if someone still used it. He held the black satin ribbon in his other hand. It was soft, warm, and strangely permeated with perfume. The same perfume that permeated his dreams, that stained his clothes, that seeped into his skin like a spell. Jasmine, tobacco, desire. Ezra closed his eyes and saw her. Liora, lying on top of the sheets, her bare legs tangled together, her hair falling onto the pillow like spilled dark ink. She was whispering something, but the sound came from within, not without, like a thought that wasn't his own. Do you remember what you promised me? The voice vibrated deep inside his ribs. Ezra shivered. He didn't know what she was talking about, but something in him knew. Back in reality, or as close as he could get, Ezra decided to test the key. He went through every room in the mansion. He tried the inner doors, old drawers, sealed chests. Nothing. It was in the basement that something changed. There, beneath the spiral staircase, was a door that never opened. His mother said it led to his father's old soundproofing room, which he had used back when he was composing. Ezra had never been interested in exploring it, but now, with the key in his hand, he felt that this was where he needed to be. The key slid in perfectly. A soft click. The handle gave way easily. Inside, a dark room, lined with red velvet on the walls, a leather armchair, a shelf of old records, and in the center, a bed. It wasn't just any bed. It was the bed from his dreams. High, with a black canopy and satin pillows, just like in his mind. Ezra took 2 steps back. His heart was beating too fast. Reality was bending, but he was not alone. "You took a while." The voice cut through the silence like a hot cut through cold skin. Ezra turned. She was there, standing, in the corner of the room, leaning against the velvet wall, barefoot, wearing only a white shirt, open to her navel. Her hair was wet, her eyes hungry. "Liora, I left clues," she said, smiling lazily. "You just had to follow the scent." Ezra wanted to ask how she had gotten in, who she was, but nothing came out. She approached slowly, as if dancing with fear. "You think I was a dream," he said, touching his chest with his finger. "But there is no dream that can mark you like this." She ran her finger under the collar of his shirt, and there, a mark, a red scratch. Fresh, real. "You called to me, Ezra. Every time you fell asleep, every time you moaned my name, you brought me back." Ezra swallowed. "What are you?" Liora smiled, leaning in until her lips brushed his ear. "Your unfulfilled promise." Ezra held her by the arms, trying to understand, trying to resist, trying not to fall. But she was warm, alive, tangible, and as he kissed her, because it was inevitable, he felt it all again. The taste of jasmine, the heat of the closed room, the shiver of doubt, the weight of what should never have been real. She bit her lower lip, pulling until it almost hurt. "You've kept me waiting for years, Ezra Delacroix." He walked away, confused. Waiting where? She turned slowly, climbing onto the bed with a naturalness that tore him apart. In the place where desires don't die, where promises aren't forgotten, where you created me. Ezra put his hand to his head. Everything was spinning. She chuckled softly, now lying back on the pillows. "You called me Liora, but that was never my name." Ezra stared at her. "So tell me, who are you?" She looked at him like it didn't matter. "I'm the part of you that you never had the courage to touch." Ezra woke up with the taste of jasmine still in his mouth, but the room was empty. The bed was unmade. The red velvet of the walls seemed darker, as if it had absorbed something from the night before, as if it held the heat of her body. He stood up slowly. Every muscle seemed to have been awakened, touched. His fingers still trembled, and his skin was marked. There was an oval mirror beside the door, an old mirror with a gilded frame and slightly warped glass. Ezra looked at himself. There were scratches on his neck, and on his shoulders fingerprints. He ran his fingers over his collarbone, as if to erase it, but they weren't delusions. They were traces. Liora had been there, in flesh and smell, in saliva and promises. And somehow, she was a part of him, a part he had buried, or created. During the day, Ezra was unable to concentrate. His employees called, sent messages, asked for decisions about the winery, budgets, contracts, but he ignored them. He was obsessed with one thing, understanding who or what Liora was. He searched through old library books, newspaper clippings, his mother's diaries. He searched through secret files in the basement, childhood memories, forgotten names. And then he found it, a leather-bound notebook, untitled, with pages full of feminine handwriting. It was the mother's, and on one of the pages, written as if it were part of a delirium, she appeared again, this time at the bedroom window. She said that one day she would come back for him, because he is hers, because she was the one who planted the seed in the belly of my fear. I saw her, and she saw me, but he will never know who created it first, the dream or the trauma. Ezra felt his spine stiffen. Had her mother seen Liora, or a version of her, the woman or entity that now invaded his bed had deeper roots than he could have imagined. At night, Ezra did not sleep. He waited, sitting in the dark room with a glass of wine in hand, watching the door. And she came. No sound, no warning, no knock, like the wind that enters through the cracks of the past. She wore only the black satin ribbon tied around her waist, falling to her hips like a reminder of sin. She didn't smile. She just walked over and sat on his lap. Ezra held his breath. Liora ran her fingers along his jaw, tracing the line of his mouth with the tip of her fingernail. "You dreamed me so hard that you gave me skin." Ezra stared at her. "Are you real?" She bit her lower lip and said, in an almost childish tone, "If I give you pleasure, am I real? Or only when I make you lose control?" She took the wine glass from his hand, took a sip, and then kissed him, with her mouth full of wine, with her lips wet and demanding. Ezra groaned softly. It was more than arousal. It was invasion. It was something taking over him. She rested her forehead against his and whispered, "What did you create me for, Ezra?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know, or because he knew too much. Hours later, she was sleeping on his chest. Ezra stroked his damp hair, trying to understand how the unreal could be so tangible. That's when he noticed. On her wrist, there was a number, tattooed in black ink. 43. The same number on the perfume bottle she found months before. The same number that appeared in her dreams. Essence 43. He muttered. Liora, still half asleep, smiled. "The number from the last time you let me go." Ezra pushed her away slightly, staring at her in fear. "How many times have you been back?" She opened her eyes slowly. "All of them. You just don't remember." Ezra didn't sleep. Liora fell asleep beside him with the serenity of someone who knows she will be dreamed of again. But he was increasingly awake. The number 43 wasn't just a mark on her body. It was a reminder, a countdown, or worse, a repetition. How many times had that presence returned? How many nights had he lived without knowing he was not alone? Ezra dressed slowly, left the dark room, and walked through the silent halls of the mansion to the old wing, where his mother kept medical files and notes on her projects. She had been a researcher before inheriting the winery, and some of what she kept there had always been a mystery. There, among folders with scientific names and hand-drawn scribbles, he found something that chilled his blood, a dossier with his full name, Ezra Delacroix, and below, in small letters, a single word, Project 43. The file didn't explain everything, but it said enough. Her mother had developed an emotional experiment based on dream patterns, unconscious impulses, and sensory projections. She believed that the human mind could materialize traumas, make them present. But what started as a study became personal. One of the excerpts read, Ezra was affected by the emotional void left by his father. I decided to test the symbolic creation of a female archetype based on the dream records of his subconscious. I called the first projection Object 43. With each interaction, he became more attached to the entity, until the point where it began to act outside the boundaries of the dream. Ezra took 2 steps back. His head was throbbing. Liora was Object 43, not a ghost, not a delusion, but a cultivated desire, fueled by him, and perhaps out of control. When he returned to the room, she was no longer there, but there was something on the pillow, a note written in dark lipstick. If you want me only in your dreams, bury me again. But if you want to wake up with me, you'll have to remember why you created me. Ezra took a deep breath. He was trapped between the real and the impossible, between pleasure and ruin. And for the first time, he realized, maybe he never had control over Liora. Maybe it was the other way around. The next day, Ezra returned to the city. I wanted to breathe different air, touch the ground. He visited the studio of an old friend of his mother's, a woman called Amelie, who specialized in symbology and records of the unconscious. He showed her the number 43, tattooed on the wrist of the woman who was visiting him. Amelie's eyes widened. This number is used in Hermetic records. It represents the interrupted cycle, the soul returning before liberation. Ezra didn't understand. Do you think she's a spirit? Amelie shook her head. I think she is the reflection of what you didn't finish. And what you don't finish comes back hungry. That night, when he returned to the mansion, he found Liora sitting at the piano. She was naked, surrounded only by candlelight. She played a strange melody. Familiar. Ezra approached silently. Did you find what you wanted? She asked, without turning her face. You are Project 43. She smiled, still playing. I'm what was left of you when you stopped loving the world. Ezra sat down beside her. He touched her bare thigh. You are dangerous. She looked at him, finally. I am irresistible, and you wanted me that way. Ezra kissed her, angry, scared, wanting, and in the middle of the kiss, she whispered, Chapter 44 is when I stay. Ezra was falling apart inside. Liora was no longer a visitor. She was routine. She woke up in his room. She drank wine from his glass. She wore his shirt to wander around the house, as if she owned every wall, every memory. And he allowed it, because the pleasure it brought was more than physical. It was chemical, ancestral, like an addiction that pulsed through the veins. But it also hurt. Every time he touched her, something inside him went dark. Every time she said his name, he forgot his own. You look different, Ezra, said one of the winery's employees during a routine visit to the company's headquarters. Different how? He replied, try to seem present. She hesitated, like someone who was being consumed. Ezra smiled, but didn't answer, because it was true. Liora consumed it, but she did it slowly, with elegance, like someone savoring something they know will end. That night, she was waiting for him in the studio. She was lying on the table, naked, with jasmine petals covering her breasts and thighs. Next to it, a bottle. Essence 43. Shall we play Remember? She asked, with that look of a predator disguised as a lover. Ezra walked over. Remember what? She took the bottle, opened it, and applied the perfume to her neck, her wrists, between her breasts. From the first day you created me, from what you wanted, from what you needed, and what you refused to admit. Ezra breathed in the air. The scent was intoxicating. It was like breathing in memories, desires, shames. He kissed her, but this time, she bit him hard. Don't pretend it's love, he whispered. You invented me to fill what was missing, but now you don't know what to do with the excess. Ezra held her tightly by the arms. He was losing control. You are too real to be made up. She smiled teasingly. Or you are too weak to resist. In the following days, Ezra began to lose time. Hours disappeared. He found himself in places around the house, without knowing how he had gotten there. Once, he woke up in the attic, naked, with the broken perfume bottle next to him, and the words stay written in red lipstick on the wall. Liora looked at him with dark tenderness. You're almost ready, Ezra. Ready for what? To accept that there is no way out. She sat on him, stroking his chest with sharp nails. You created me with the most primitive in you, with the fear of loneliness, with the hunger to be touched without being judged, with the desire to lose yourself in order to find yourself. She kissed him. Now you are my mirror, and I am everything you never had the courage to be. Ezra cried, but she licked her tears. Every night, I will whisper your name, until you forget what silence is. Ezra stopped running. He stopped resisting, rationalizing, denying. Liora was everywhere, in the smell of the house, in the vinyl that played alone at midnight, in the mirrors that no longer reflected just his face. She was in him, and he was starting to like it. But that night, she wanted more. More than body, more than pleasure. She wanted confession. They were in the room with red velvet walls. The light was dim, and Liora was wearing only a translucent robe, which made what she was trying to hide even more visible. Do you want to know the truth? She asked, sitting on his lap. Ezra nodded. Then you'll have to show me something first. What? She brought her lips close to his ear, nibbling lightly. The mirror, the one from childhood, where it all began. Ezra turned pale. He knew which mirror she was talking about. The old one, in the locked basement of the east wing of the house. The one his mother always told him not to touch. The one that reflected differently. Hours later, with Liora by his side, he unlocked the door to the forgotten basement. The smell of dust and aged wine mingled with something else. Something bittersweet, sensual, disturbing. There it was. The black-framed mirror, with Greek and Latin inscriptions around the rim. An artifact that shouldn't be there. Something too old to be just an object. Ezra walked closer, and when he saw his reflection, he froze. There he was. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, Liora. And in her eyes, there were no pupils. Just smoke. You saw me here for the first time, remember? She whispered, now truly behind him. Ezra stared at the reflection. And then the unthinkable. Liora's reflection smiled. But the real Liora did not. It was as if the mirror had a life of its own. She ran her hand over his chest and turned him to face her. This mirror is the portal, the first door, the origin of what you gave me. Ezra tried to understand. Were you born in it? She touched her fingers to her lips, then pressed them to his. No, you saw me there and you wanted me to leave. You created me, and your mother tried to stop you. Ezra felt a violent shiver. Did my mother know? She tried to destroy me, but you didn't let her. Ezra's blood ran cold. I was a child. Yes, she said, stroking his face with twisted tenderness. But even a child can wish for the impossible hard enough. She pointed to the mirror. You called me, and I came. Ezra stepped back. His mind was spinning. Memories came to him in flashes. A lonely childhood. Recurring nightmares about a woman with wet hair. Whispers in the early hours of the morning. Doors that opened by themselves. And the mirror that always called him back. Liora held out her hand. Now, Ezra, we need to finish what we started. What does that mean? It means you're going to come in with me. And remember what you forgot. Ezra hesitated. What if I don't want to? She stepped closer once more, eyes dark, devouring. Then I'll keep coming back. Every night, whispering your name. Until you wish you'd never woken up. Liora's touch was a promise and a sentence. Ezra stood before the mirror, the ancient glass vibrating as if it were breathing. The frame, cool to the touch, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. A life he himself had nurtured with years of desire, denial, and silence. Are you ready? Liora, she asked, naked now. Her body reflected twice. Once as he knew it, and once darker, rawer, wilder. Ezra nodded, even though he was unsure. She reached out her hand. He took it, and together they crossed. The crossing was not physical. It was sensory. He felt his own body shatter into particles of heat and memory. Each memory a thread, each unspoken desire, tether. When he opened his eyes, he was in a familiar room, but not exactly his own. It was an inverted copy of his room. Same architecture, same bed, same piano. But the colors were denser, the air warmer, time distorted. And there, standing, waiting for him, was Liora, but not the same. She was more alive, more dangerous, more naked. This is where you've kept me all these years, she said, pacing around him like a panther tamed by no one. You locked me away when you were sober. You released me when you felt empty, and you suffocated me when you wanted to forget. Ezra looked around, confused. Here's my mind. She laughed. This is where you created me with the darkest part of you, with the hunger for a touch that doesn't judge, with the lust of someone who wants to forget the world in a body. She moved closer until her chest touched his. But the problem with giving form to desire is that it begins to desire itself. Ezra held her by the waist. What do you want? She didn't answer. She kissed him, and in that kiss, Ezra felt all the women he had loved, betrayed, lost, imagined. He felt his mother's pain, his father's absence, the loneliness in the winery's corridors, the echo of his name whispered on nights when no one was waiting for him awake. Liora took him to the bed. She laid him down and, straddling him, whispered, "You wanted to forget, but now you will remember. Every touch, every night, every time you buried me, and call me back without realizing it. She began to move her body like a dance, like a sentence, and Ezra cried, of pleasure, of fear, of guilt. "You don't love me, Ezra," she said, her eyes fixed on his. "You just can't live without me." Hours later, or days, Ezra stood up alone. The Liora in the mirror was gone, but the room remained. The mirror, now on the opposite wall, showed his real self on his knees, weak, marked. On the wall, written in blood, a sentence: "Either you love me, or you accept me." Ezra understood. There was no way to go back without taking something with him. And maybe he didn't want to go back after all. The mirror was now a door of no return. Ezra was back in reality, or at least what was left of it. The room looked the same: walls, bed, mirrors, but something had changed. Inside him, Liora remained. Even absent, she pulsed, like a perfume that impregnates clothes even after they have been washed. In the days that followed, Ezra tried to act as he had before. He went to the winery, answered emails, signed contracts, but people's faces seemed like blurs. Their words were distant echoes, and every time he looked in the mirror, she was there, somehow, in the curve of his neck, in the goosebumps on his skin, in the whisper that was no longer his. One opaque morning, Ezra went down to the velvet room. The mirror trembled slightly, as if it was waiting. He reached out and touched the surface. "I don't know if I can live with you," he murmured, "but I can't live without you either." The glass warmed under his hand. It was then that she appeared behind him, Liora, with the same translucent robe, with calmer eyes, as if she knew the end was near. "You call me even when you are silent," she said. "You love me even when you lie that you don't." Ezra turned. He looked at her, and for the first time, he saw not just the desire, but the humanness, the flawedness, the brokenness. She smiled. "You created what you needed. Now you must decide, destroy me or accept me." Ezra came closer. He touched her face. "If I destroy you, the emptiness returns. If I accept you, I lose myself." Liora nodded. "But maybe you never really found yourself." That night, he loved her as if he were saying goodbye. Slowly, with pain, with surrender, with each touch, he said things he had never said to anyone. He confessed fears, desires, shames, and when she wrapped her legs around him, her arms around him, her eyes around him, he understood. Liora was not a woman. She was the mirror of everything he would not admit. The hidden feminine, the flesh of the unconscious, the pleasure that did not ask for permission. She was his freedom and his prison. The next dawn, Ezra woke up alone. On the pillow, a new note, written by hand, with the usual dark lipstick. "Every night, I whisper your name, not to possess you, but so that you never forget who you really are. You created me, but now, I live in you." Ezra took a deep breath. He lay down again, and for the first time in many years, he did not cry, because now, when he heard his name whispered in the dark, he would know. It wasn't a nightmare. It was just the sound of truth coming home.